All right, so major playoffs start tomorrow. First, though, I'm gonna recap the Swiss stage predictions real quick because I'm sure, like for me, it was probably a mess for everyone. Whether you follow my predictions, followed somebody else's predictions, or did your own. Um, I mean, just like every Swiss stage, it's just wildly unpredictable for the most part. So ended up getting 5 out of the 8 teams that qualified to playoffs correctly, and then we only got 2 teams in the correct bracket. So you might notice that also if you watch my Swiss prediction video. I did originally have 5 fears here instead of wild card, and I went back with like 5 minutes left before predictions ended just to ask myself if those were the 100% the predictions I was good going in with. So there wasn't really time to make another video on it, and then I ended up like last minute deciding to swap out 5 fears for wildcard. So that ended up working out, and it was super close, but it was so close because they wildcard in 5 years, and of course is how it's gonna go. It made it so much more stressful for me because I swapped them out for wildcard, 5 years out for wildcard, and then they end up playing each other on that last round of Swiss in an elimination, a win or go home game, and my whole prediction is riding or dying on that match no matter which of those teams I ended up picking. And we were one round away from it being 5 years instead of wild card. Um, but the main reason why I swapped the wild card last minute is because I picked against wild card so many times last year, and it just always never worked out for me. Um, and it didn't feel right doing it again to them, even though they were coming into this tournament with the hot and cold substitute. It still just didn't feel right. So I decided that kind of like last second that even though 5 years definitely seemed like a good team, they might just not have enough experience yet to be composed to close out those do or die matches, which I felt like they would definitely end up playing and they would get to day 5. So, which they did. So, yeah. Now, probably the biggest talking point here, too, the biggest failure of the predictions is predicting, honestly, just more Brazilian teams. Furia in particular, like, hugely disappointing this tournament. I think Brazil, if you exclude FaZe, they went and combined 2-9 in Swiss um, in matches because Furia went 0-3, Los went 1-3, and then NIP also went 1-3. Los I didn't take because I knew they were not very great besides Perez, but I knew Perez wouldn't be able to carry them. NIP though, like of course they ended up eliminating Fear, and that was their only win this event. So like they were also pretty much equally as disappointing. Um, but Fear were downright terrible, um, which is really disappointing because I mean they got first place in the Brazil League this stage, which yes, they aren't FaZe, and I thought FaZe would for sure probably lose one of the best ones, and I mean they almost did. They were both 7-5s in those best of ones. I thought FaZe would maybe test a map in one of those BO ones and drop it, but they ended up going 3-0. Um, but yeah, but big bad event here from Brazil. If you're not FaZe Clan, FaZe have been the only good Brazilian team at this event. G2 also probably should have gone 3-0, and they kind of choked against Twisted Minds on map 3. So I can't be too mad that they fell 3-1. Um, but yeah, and I'm Twisted Minds. I knew they would make top 8. I had a good feeling about them making them top 8, but I didn't think it'd be 3-0. I thought it'd be 3-1 or 3-2, and I was leaning more towards 3-2. So very impressive from them to go 3-0. And honestly, it makes you wonder like um, what Twisted Minds are going to do next stage, especially with if they're playing this good with guards instead of Dove. Are they just gonna put Dove as a sub now and then guards back to the main roster? Because honestly, with Dove. Even though I thought they would be a top 8 team with Dove. I thought that would be kind of their ceiling with Dove. But now I think they're like a minimum top 4 team. That's their floor this event. Like, and I think they have a decent chance to make it to the final and potentially even win it. Um, with the way they've been playing and their bracket too. So yeah, and then Weibo, unfortunately they they couldn't break that um, round 5 of Swiss curse, which they can't seem to break, which is disappointing. Honestly, I only had them in the 3-1 spot because in the Project Prisma simulator, if they the if they won the matchups that I thought, if the matchups played out how I thought they would in that, then they would have had, in my opinion, some easier matchups that would have allowed them to go 3-1, and it didn't play out that way. So they ended up going to day 5, and then they had a really rough day 5 where we saw Enterprise make the main stage, which um, watching that game was hard for me because it was like, for on one hand, it was like I need Weibo to win for my predictions, but also on the other hand, like it'd be really cool to see Enterprise win because it's been like 6 years since an Australian team has made main stage at an event for Siege. So that was really cool to see. And then Falcons, I had, that was my one that I was like, pretty sure they'd be a day 5 team because they were kind of, you know, they were kind of shaky in phase 1, and I definitely thought that they would take some losses in Swiss, which they did, but they would still be able to pull through. I think a lot of people also took VP to go through to playoffs, but I just didn't see it, especially with the matchups they were getting. VP got so many hard matchups, no matter kind of what route they went, so I didn't really see them making it through. And yeah, it was close, but they didn't make it. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the Swiss recap, and then now for playoffs. So honestly, these first round matchups are really good as well. They're like all kind of bangers. We got Falcons, Phase, DZ, Wildcard, which we did see in this was. So that's kind of like the only lame one in my opinion. Which, not that it's a bad matchup between teams, which is like the fact that it's NA. Like we couldn't have like put Twisted Minds or Enterprise against one of these NA teams and then put either DZ or Wildcard down here. But that's just how the seeding worked out, I believe. So, and then yeah, we have EP Twisted and then G2 SR. So, ooh, the one thing we can look at for sure is we know, of course, that DZ already 2-0'd Wildcard pretty handedly in Swiss. It wasn't that close. Now we could have a moment where DZ come out and just beat them again, but we could also have them where Wildcard learned from their previous match against AZ and then fix their mistakes and ended up beating them. And there's also the factor that previously this core of Wildcard has had pretty solid international success, where all the core of the current Dark Zero is the core of the old SSG, which really struggled internationally in the past for the most part. Um, so yeah, I think it's this is probably the hardest one to predict, though none of them are easy. So let's just start top down. For me, I just, even though I think Falcons are still primed to make a run at one of these tournaments, I just, at this point I don't know what tournament it's gonna be. Like, they could do it here. They have a solid record against FaZe. Like, FaZe beat Falcons, Falcons beat FaZe, and it kind of flips between tournaments. But FaZe just, I just trust them more um, to win that. Then, like I said, I think for DZ wildcard, I think DZ are kind of finally get over their like main stage international hump here, and they're gonna be wildcard again. But um, yeah, I could be burned here because I feel like every time I pick against wildcard, I fucking lose. So this is probably the easiest one. I think most people are probably going to take Twisted Minds. As much as I would love to see Enterprise go through, and I will be rooting for Enterprise this match. I mean, Twisted Minds, just their playstyle is like so insufferable to play against and works really well with the current meta. So they just look kind of otherworldly. And then G2 versus SR, another hard one to predict because even though I would say G2 have looked better than SR this tournament, they both went 3-1. But I mean, you can look at the quality of opponents SR face. Yes, they had a good win against VP, but I said in my predictions for Swiss when we saw these first round matchups, I said SR would probably beat VP because stylistically, VP just not work well against NA teams. Um, so SR did end up beating VP, and then they lost to FaZe in a close game, right? And then they won against All Gamers, who honestly weren't that bad this event, but still, very new. And then they also beat Enterprise, who also have been pretty good this event, but at the end of the day, it's still what people and I would consider a bit of an easier game than if SR matched up against Wildcard or DZ or G2 in this round. Um, and they couldn't have played VP again, of course. So I think they definitely had a bit of a slightly easier route, to the playoffs here than G2 did. Um, but I still think it's very close, especially considering SR beat G2 both times they played each other last year, which was in uh, EWC and then at SI, where SR has a 3-0 map record against G2 um, in their most recent matches. But of course, G2 have changed the roster since then, and they added Chaiko and Benja, which I think have been big improvements for them. And I do think G2 are going to get their rematch against Twisted Minds, but I think this is like, honestly, I think most of these series go map 3 except for this one. Maybe FaZe 2L Falcons as well. I could see that happening. But I think like, most of these series have potential for 3 maps, but it's very unlikely that every series goes 3. Someone's probably going to get 2-0'd. So this is what I'm going with. FaZe DZ, Twisted Minds, G2, and then after quarterfinals are going to be over, I'll be back for semis predictions, and then the same thing for the grand final. And then yeah, currently I'm at 13 points, and that's only because I swapped a wild card as well. For Swiss, I think Battle Pass is impossible. You pretty much would have had to gone perfect for the Swiss predictions, I think, to get the Battle Pass. Because you only get 1 point per correct winner, and you get none if you don't. So like I can only get 7 points here total, which it's not even enough to get to like the 5 alpha packs here. It's only enough to get the skin. So the skin's the goal at this point. And if you follow my other predictions, you'd only or if you follow the predictions from my video, you'd only be at 11. Um, so sorry about that, especially if you because I change. I usually don't like to change, but for this event, I was feeling that the Swiss would be really unpredictable, and I felt like I don't know. I felt like I was gonna get burned a little for not picking DZ and Shopify. Like it was hard to not pick them, but through previous previous years, it's just so hard to root against the Brazilian teams, especially against NA, because normally the Brazilian teams kind of farm NA, but they didn't end up really playing each other very much. Besides FaZe, of course. So yeah, they kind of just farmed each other, and then Los was just bad anyways. So yeah, the goal at this point is the skin because that's as high as I can get. I need what, 4 points? Yeah, four for the skin personally, and then if you follow my predictions to the T, then you'd only be at 11, so you need six. So damn, I'd have to, if you're still gonna keep following me, I have to get 6 out of 7 of these correct. So yeah, definitely not easy here, but you know what? It's not supposed to be easy, and it's still fun whether I get these right or not. It's not the biggest deal for me to get the battle pass. I know other people, really want that free battle pass though, so I know it does suck if you follow predictions, my predictions, someone else's predictions, or make your own, and you get them wrong. It's not a great feeling, but at the end of the day, it's free predictions, right? You're not like putting money on this or anything. I wouldn't put money on these. That be money on esports. That is insane. Um, but yeah. Anyways, that's it for this video. We'll be back for semis after the quarters and tomorrow. And yeah, in the meantime, have a good one.